Hey guys, this is Aaron from Fight Quality. Today I've got a review of the Phenom Boxing Elite SG200 boxing gloves. Let's check it out. So the brand Phenom Boxing was started by a group of people who have over 20 years experience in designing boxing gloves. They decided to put that knowledge together to make their own brand, Phenom Boxing, and start producing some really high quality gear. So the Elite SG200 is actually a good example of this. It's one of their more premium models. Phenom sent us over a pair of these so we could test them out and review them. Here's what we thought. So I said in our written review on fightquality.com that I was actually pretty skeptical before I got these gloves. Usually I have a good idea of the brand before we get them, but with Phenom I hadn't really heard about them before. They weren't really on the radar that much. It's far too easy for brands to just slap premium on the label and stick the price up and actually sell their glove without justifying the quality. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. These actually seem to be really well put together boxing gloves, and we'll go through why in a minute. So Phenom's boxing gloves have actually been used by a few big people, one of which being Amir. So Phenom do have gloves in both laces and Velcro. The SG200 is the lace-up equivalent. These are in 16 ounce, but there are other sizes available as well. When it comes to visuals, there's a whole host of options available. This is just one of many. There's loads of different colors. They also do custom versions, so you can really choose whatever you want. This version though, it is white and black, as you can see, with the contrasting on the wrist, and Phenom Boxing there. Most versions actually have a P logo in the background, but this one doesn't, which I think actually makes it a little bit classier, a little bit cleaner. I actually prefer it without. On the palm of the hand, you also have this pattern formed out of the P logo from Phenom. Personally, when I first saw these, I really wasn't sure on the pattern. I think it's a bit hit and miss, and I can understand why some people might not like it. But when I actually started using these, put them on and start moving around, the motion makes it look really cool, and I actually don't mind them now. I guess it's one of those things where you can't really tell what something's like until you try it, and then you actually do get it yourself and you realize, actually, that's quite nice. So as well as this video, we've also got our Fight Gear Focus series where we show you a close-up of the gloves a bit better, and you can really get a better feel for what they look like. We'll put a link to that in the description. So obviously the quality and the build construction is what you really care about when you're paying this much for a glove. Thankfully, these are made with premium full grain leather, and it really shows. When you touch it, you can instantly feel the quality. They seem really high grade, and there's clearly a lot of thought and a lot of money gone into this. Speaking of the leather, you can tell the craftsmanship that's gone into this because how neat everything is. Even the folds around the edge of the gloves are really neatly tucked in. Everything's really nice. It all looks like there's a lot of attention being put in. These definitely haven't just been thrown together, at least. We usually look for things like stitching quality in that. It's a little bit hard to see with the pattern here, but everything seems to be done really well. There's no issues, everything's secured as we'd expect. There's not even a single loose thread that I can find on these gloves. So if I did have one minor gripe, it might be that the stitching isn't perfectly straight when you have it in the middle of these ridges here. However, that is a bit of a difficult area to stitch, so I can kind of understand that and let them off. It is double stitched, so it should hold fine. It's just one of those things that when you're looking close up, it isn't necessarily the prettiest. Okay, so that's it for the outside, but what about the inside? Sorry, I've got these laced up, so they're a little bit hard to put on. Okay, so when you've got these on, the lining's pretty soft on the skin actually. It's a little bit smooth, but it's not satiny. It's got a bit of a softness to it. So the only area this isn't true is on the inside of the thumb, just here. You don't have that inner lining, so it's just the leather. But that's not too much of an issue for me. It certainly didn't seem to make the gloves feel any hotter when they were on. So I can overlook that, that's fine. Usually we would suggest always use wraps on training, but I have actually tested these with and without. And even without, they are perfectly comfortable. They hold your hand in place really nicely, and they're genuinely quite enjoyable to wear. Obviously, once you've got them on, the padding holds your hand in place nicely. They're actually a really quite close, snug fit, which I think is really good in a lace-up glove, especially with the wrist. It's a very naturally slim wrist, so if you do have slimmer arms like myself, these are absolutely perfect. However, if you do have slightly wider wrists, you can rely on the laces, obviously, to give you that tight fit. Sometimes if you're a bit slimmer like me, it's a bit hard to find a glove that actually fits well and you just have to artificially tighten it up too much with the laces. But these do have a nice perfect fit, even with a 16-ounce training glove. In terms of density, I'd probably say it's a medium firm. They're not the softest, but they're also not hard. They do make quite a nice contact actually. Obviously the other benefit when you've got a glove with slightly firmer padding is it means you can really feel the contact, so you can get a nice sense of the contact you're making and where you're punching and whether you're landing correctly, which is always helpful, especially if you're doing other sorts of training, for example, if you're on the bag or pads. But then even in sparring that helps too, just because you can feel how solid a contact you've made. I personally really like that, but it kind of depends on what sort of sparring glove you're looking for. So when it comes to comfort, I really mentioned in my written review on fightquality.com, I really actually enjoy the fit of these gloves. The thumb seems to be in a good position to me, maybe holding a little bit tightly here, but not as bad as some gloves. The fingers feel really natural, and there's actually a good amount of movement there naturally, so you can open your hands up if you're looking to parry or perhaps just like have a bit more of an open hand stance, which I personally really love. I mean, I do a lot of Muay Thai, so that comes in really handy for that. But even in normal boxing, it's just good for knocking shots out of the way. Another part of what makes these fit really well is the hand compartment is just so well shaped. I think a lot of the times brands tend to just give you a fairly open hand compartment to make it a bit universal, and then just cram in a lot of padding so your hand feels squashed in place, which is great to start off with, but then when you start using the gloves a bit more, it starts to loosen up and you don't really have that same fit. With these gloves though, it does just feel like they are really well made, so the positioning of the hand is really well done. It feels like they're well shaped and well put together, and I think that all lends itself to that great fit and feel, which I think probably rivals a lot of other good brands out there. Personally, out of the gloves that I've used, I'd say these are probably my maybe second favourite fit. I think the only thing I prefer is the Rival RS1 boxing gloves, because they really do feel perfectly made for your hand. But as far as traditional style gloves go, these are absolutely brilliant. And obviously where these are a medium firm density boxing glove, that does mean that they're not too puffy. So they're fairly slim, they've got a fairly slim profile as you can probably see, which just makes it good for slipping in gaps, getting in there and sparring especially, which is another factor that really plays out when you're actually putting these to the test. And I really don't mind that at all. Sometimes it's nice to have that bigger guard, but when you're actually trying to improve your skills, where you already would be if you're playing for a more premium glove like this, then the ability to really time and place your shots is really essential. So another thing I've found with these gloves is, especially around the palm and the fingers, it can actually get quite hot. I think that's a little bit because of the lining, and there's not a huge amount of breathability. There are some holes I don't know if you can see here, but they're not really doing that much, I don't think. It's not really helping a lot. The thumb surprisingly doesn't feel too bad, but especially around the wrist and hand, it's really, you can get quite sweaty sometimes, which if you have to take your gloves off and put them back on, it's not always the most pleasant. So yeah, overall I think they could add a few more maybe perforations just to open up a little bit more, or perhaps even just increase the size of the existing ones. Other than that though, these are a really solid pair of gloves and I've actually really enjoyed testing them out. Alright, budget. This is the one that nobody likes, the cost. Unfortunately, these gloves are going to cost you about £150, which, let's be real, is not a small amount. So if you are looking at these, you're probably going to be someone who's taking their training a lot more seriously, looking for a good sparring only glove, or perhaps you even want to use these for bags. And I mean, if we're going to put that into perspective, we've also tested out the RDX Pro gloves, which are a little bit less pricey, but these are miles ahead of in terms of quality. And perhaps the Rival RS1 that you mentioned earlier, which are a slightly better fitting glove, but also slightly more expensive than these. But in terms of quality, they're probably on par, to be perfectly honest. So with that in mind, that £149.99 price tag is probably actually not too far off what we'd expect for these. And they certainly justify it with the amount of quality that's put into these, and we haven't really found too many faults with these other than perhaps the breathability. So just to summarize what we did and didn't like, there's plenty of color options available with these gloves, so you can pretty much go for anything you want, as well as getting lace-up versions, Velcro versions. There's a whole host of options available from Phenom. I also really personally liked they're a very slim fitting glove, especially for someone like me who's much leaner build. And the padding with that as well is very nice for sparring, you can really get in the gaps as well. The quality is pretty top notch with these, I can't fault the leather at all. I haven't really found any major issues with the stitching, and they're not really coming apart. I haven't seen any real signs of wear just yet. But on the flip side, we do find that these can get a little bit hot after training for a long period of time. It just builds up sweat. If you've got hand wraps on, it's not so much of an issue, but still the hand compartment does feel very hot, especially if you're taking these gloves off after a long session and then putting them back on again for a little bit more. You really do notice that. Other than that, hope you like this review of the Phenom Boxing SG200 boxing gloves. Before you go, just want to point out, I've been wearing the Fight Quality Gold t-shirt for this video. If you want to grab something like this yourself, head over to fightquality.com/shop. You can pick yourself up your own t-shirt. So that's all for this review. If you enjoyed this, head over to fightquality.com for a whole load of written reviews and guides. Otherwise, if you like the video stuff, head over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next time.